This is Kim Meyer, host of Choose to Rise. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
In a world where everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and life as we know it revolves around social media. Here to humble down those social media addicts who believe in all things through the internet. It's time for a reality check. Hey, welcome back to Reality Check, giving you your weekly dose of reality. This week we have very special guest and Greek extravaganza know-it-all, Abby Gindorff. She is a former leadership consultant for Alpha Gamma Delta, but also an Alpha Gamma herself. Here to give us more information on what Greek life is all about, as well as her story. Thank you so much for joining us today, Abby. Welcome back to Reality Check. Thank you so much for joining us today, Abby.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Abby, can you introduce yourself a little bit? What is your experience? I know that you're a direct representative of IHQ for Alpha Gamma Delta. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your duties and job description kind of is.
Yeah, so my name is Abby Gindorff. I am from Minnesota, and last year I got a job working for Alpha Gamma Delta International Headquarters, which was a super cool opportunity. I'm super thankful to still be working for them. Last year I served as a leadership consultant working specifically with new chapters. So I traveled a lot, specifically to Whitewater, Wisconsin, and to San Marcos, Texas, working with our newer chapters there. And this year as a second-year leadership consultant, amid COVID-19 craziness, I'm kind of doing whatever they need me to do. So every day looks a little different. If you told me last year I would have been telling women how to recruit over Zoom, I definitely would not have expected that, but it's been a really cool experience. Getting to travel all over the country and meet tons of different women has definitely been something I've been able to learn a lot from, and it's been really fun. So I really enjoyed it.
So there is a lot of stereotypes surrounding Greek life, and I know over the centuries that we've been here and we've been established that we've been kind of trying to change the narrative. So what are some stereotypes that you hear that you know are for a fact not true?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the stereotypes that are portrayed like in movies and TV shows are definitely not at all what sorority life has been like in my experience. I have definitely seen movies where it's all about partying and everyone's really shallow and petty and all the women really don't like each other and all these different things that I think they aim to portray, especially women, in a very like negative and shallow, like I said, and kind of superficial light. And that's kind of what people want to put sorority girls into that box, sorority women. And I think that in my experience, sorority women are so smart and they're so kind to one another. And they really genuinely want to find a sisterhood that is going to give them those connections and that support system. And they care so much more about education than anyone in the media ever portrays. You know, they're so ambitious and so driven and just very inspiring women to be around. And I've never found that those stereotypes have really held up. Like, obviously, every individual makes her own choices, but I think in general, like, the media wants sorority women to be shallow and superficial, but they're so much deeper than that. The connections they have with one another are so much deeper than that. And their value and substance is unmatched of any other group I've ever interacted with.
So you talked a little bit about recruitment. What does necessarily recruitment mean for people who don't necessarily understand Greek life? I think that there's sometimes some misconception when it comes to recruiting, and they're like, oh, well, what bad things do I have to do in order to be in a sorority or a fraternity? And obviously, we don't do any hazing to that effect. But what exactly is the recruitment process? What does it look like? And what message could you give to individuals who are looking to be in Greek life that are going through recruitment right now?
Yeah, so obviously this year looks really different than any other year for joining a Greek life organization and going to a higher ed institution in general. I think every state is a tiny bit different in what their recruitment process is going to look like. National Panhellenic just released a statement yesterday, basically saying for women's organizations. So if you don't know, I can explain really quick. So all of the sororities that are like established, that are typically like social sororities and fraternities for women and those sorts of things, fall under a large national umbrella called National Panhellenic. And so we all like kind of are operating under the same umbrella of MPC, if that makes sense. So National Panhellenic released a statement yesterday, actually, saying that if you have not already completed your recruitment is going to be virtual. So that means all of our universities are going to be meeting people over Zoom, and there might be slight modifications to that depending on your like informal recruitment process and those types of things, but it's looking like it's going to be Zoom for now. So my tips for people who are going through recruitment on Zoom are to not let it discourage you from joining a Greek life organization. I heard this great quote when I was actually listening to a speaker, and she said that recruitment is the beginning of Greek life. It is not your Greek life story. So it's not going to be your whole experience. It's just how it's getting started because of the circumstances with COVID-19. But I think in the media, a lot of times sorority recruitment is portrayed as like really fake and everyone trying to just be like the version of themselves that they think everyone wants to meet. And my advice would just be to be yourself, because the organization that you end up joining throughout the recruitment process is the organization that you're going to be in. So if you are a fake version of yourself during sorority recruitment, for example, you're going to have to continue to be that fake person for 4 years, 3 years, however long you're in the organization. Where if you are yourself and you really focus on making genuine connections with other women, you're going to really find an organization that is going to embody like the best parts of yourself and really find women who are going to support you and that kind of stuff. So just be yourself, be authentic. And I think that's the best way that you can find where you're supposed to be.
So you talked a little bit about your Greek life story. What exactly is a Greek life story for those who don't know what Greek life is?
Yeah, so it's kind of this story of, it can really be whatever you want it to be, but it's kind of the story you write for yourself when you decide, am I thinking about joining like a sorority or a fraternity? Like, and then you kind of enter the recruitment process. Some people know, like from in high school, they're like, I'm going to join like Greek life when I get to college. And some people are sophomores, juniors in college, and they're like, you know what, this group of women or this group of men is really outstanding, and that's some people that I would like to surround myself with. And it's kind of how you got to your organization and then the connections that you made within that organization. So kind of what in the organization made you stay after you joined. So it looks a little bit different for everybody. And I love hearing other people's stories because every single one is unique about, oh, well, my parents were both in Greek life, or no one in my family was in Greek life. And I was looking for a support system. I was looking for professional development. And I found like this awesome group of women or men. And I really like learned a lot about myself, and everybody's is a little bit different. And I think that's the awesome thing about fraternity and sorority life is you see a lot of people who are finding out more about themselves and are becoming better versions of themselves in so many different aspects. That could be in their relationships with one another. That could be academically. It could be mental and physical health. Like you never really know, but everyone has a story to tell, which is something that I think is really cool. And not a lot of other organizations can say that, I think.
So what's your Greek life story?
Yeah, so I was kind of tossing around the idea of joining a sorority when I went to college. And it was something that was kind of always in the back of my head because this woman who I went to high school with, she was a few years older than me, went to college and joined a sorority, and she came back and she was like, Abby, you have to join one. Like, it's going to be, you would love it. And so that was kind of always in the back of my head, but I was like, I don't know, And then I went to North Dakota State University as my undergrad in Fargo, North Dakota. And they had like a get to know you kind of event where I went and I talked to this woman who I'm still friends with to this day. She actually wasn't in the same chapter as me, but I was speaking with her and I was like, she's like literally the coolest person I've ever met in my and so that kind of inspired me. I literally left that event, went back to my residence hall and signed up for recruitment like the second I got back, and kind of never looked back from there. I had a great experience in recruitment. I joined Alpha Gamma Delta, which was a great experience. And, I had 4 years of making lots of memories, learning a lot about myself. And now Alpha Gamma is the gift that keeps on giving, because I ended up working for them as well, which has been a wonderful experience. But I think the thing that really made my experience was the people that I met, both in Alpha Gamma and in other organizations. Some of my best friends were in other sororities or fraternities, and I think that's something else that gets missed in the media, is they like to portray like this sense of competition between all these other organizations, and not everyone always gets along. It's not always, roses and like hugs and kisses and unicorns and everything, but there's this sense of community. And definitely in my experience at my undergrad, like there was such a strong sense of community and everyone looking out for one another and having each other's backs. So that was something that was very special to me, and I really try and instill that when I'm working with other collegiate groups as well.
So as a fellow Alpha Gam, we love to talk about our home away from home. How did you know that Alpha Gam was your home away from home?
So there was actually a moment when I was talking to a woman during recruitment, and it was really wild because I was so nervous, because I was like, oh my gosh, I want to make a good impression on these people. Like they're all so cool and all this stuff. And then she started talking to me about, in the same conversation, we talked about how we both loved Harry Potter. And we both loved listening to the Arctic Monkeys, which are two vastly different topics, but we like connected on both of those things. And then the next day I was talking to a woman, and we really connected talking about like our relationships with our families. So we had like, within those two women, I had people who had similar like familial values to me, as well as similar interests and hobbies to me. And so I was just thinking about how like crazy it was that there was an organization that had like, if this was just two of the women I met, like waited until I met the rest of these women. And so that was really the moment where I was like, I think Alpha Gamma is the place for me. And just walking into that house on the last day of recruitment, I was like, it feels very homey. Like this is somewhere where I can come and kick my shoes off at the end of the day, sit down on the couch and like watch The Bachelor with my sisters or do whatever, And so that was kind of the moment where I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I never really looked back.
So last but certainly not least, the one question that we always ask any Greek life individual, fraternity, sorority life, whatever it may be, is that if there's someone who is unsure of joining Greek life, what would you tell them?
So what I tell people when they're kind of considering going through, or if it's something that they're kind of on the fence about, I kind of say something that my dad said to me when I was unrelated, but he said this to me all the time, is like, you're never going to know until you try, and don't you want to know, kind of thing. So it was kind of about like taking that chance and not looking back on life with any regrets, because if you go through the process and decide, you know what, this isn't for me, that's totally fine. And you can look back knowing like, hey, I tried it out. It wasn't for me. And I know that for a fact, but most times people go through, and if you go through with an open mind, you're going to find those connections, and you're going to find a group of women or men that you're really excited about and that you want to get to know better. And you're going to look back on all those memories you made and can't believe that you were even considering not going through that process, So I'm very much of not living my life with any regrets and taking all the chances that I can. So I would say if you're considering it, take the leap, take the chance, and I really don't think you'll regret it.
Well, thank you so much, Abby, for joining us today. And I think your father is a very wise man for giving you that advice.
He is.
I'm very thankful to be able to have connected with you through Alpha Gamma. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you again for having me. It was so much fun.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today on Reality Check and getting your weekly dose of reality. I'm Catherine Smith, your host. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate you listening to Reality Check. For even more content, follow us on social media at Reality Check Blog. To stay more engaged and get your topics covered on Reality Check, or maybe even your story, using the hashtag Reality Check. Reality Check is an official production of Public House Media.